Well, hi there. Warm welcome. You're watching Blueprint Explosive Exclusive, and I'm Meghna Deka. What you just saw was a U.S. Air Force officer who was rescued from Iran after 36 hours behind enemy lines. American President Donald Trump, well, he called it one of the most daring search and rescue operations. But within hours, his euphoria turned into fiery eruption. His relief was replaced by rage. Trump unleashed a post filled with explicitives of fury and of frustration. So tonight at 10:30 p.m. India time, Trump will be addressing the nation. Tomorrow at 5:30 a.m. India time, his 48-hour Hormuz deadline comes to an end. So what will it be? Ceasefire in a 37-day war, or a crescendo in harder arsenal? Will it be diplomacy, or will it be devastation? After an epic meltdown, will there be epic hell for Iran and also the rest of the world? Tonight, we are going to break down how a desperate Trump can be dangerous Trump. First, let's tell you what exactly it is that Trump has posted. The signs of frustration which are unmissable. There you have it on your screens. Trump's Hormuz ultimatum, he says, Tuesday will be a power plant and a bridge day. Allies must join the effort in Hormuz. US doesn't need the Strait of Hormuz. Open the Hormuz within 48 hours or else. He also goes on to say strikes have been postponed for 5 days. Deadline have been extended to April 6th. In fact, he has said, this is what he has said. Open the strait, and he's used so many explicits that I'm not going to repeat it. He says, open the strait or else such and such. Essentially, he says Tuesday is going to be a power plant and bridge day. Open the strait, you crazy. And then he has more explicits and abuses that he uses, or else you'll be living in hell. Just watch. He says Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Time is running out. Hell will rain down on them. Threats which are coming in from President Trump. But why? Many have said that he says that he's won the war. Then why does he need to give out more threats? What does this recourse to profanity on the global stage really reveal about Trump? Well, as per expert, it reveals that the US president, closeted in with his aides, is frustrated. He's ranting. Because it has been, the first reason, it has been 37 days since the Strait of Hormuz has been literally choked by Iran. Epic fury is clearly not playing out the way he had expected in the script, where he thought that it will be essentially Venezuela 2.0, quick entry and a quick exit. He's entered, but he doesn't know where the exit is anymore. Then this pattern of lashing out at senior officials who speak the truth. We've seen him conduct himself in that manner with professional army officers, military officers, Air Force officers who've acted with integrity. However, Trump has compelled the US Army Chief of Staff, General Randy George, to retire immediately. Imagine the Army Chief of Staff retiring in the middle of a war, that is. Reports are indicating that over 20 top generals, 20 top admirals have been fired or sidelined by Trump team as early as April 2026. At least 16 US military aircrafts have been destroyed since the start of the war with Iran, including 10 Reaper strike drones, which have been hit by enemy fire, with half a dozen other planes who've been badly damaged in attacks or in accidents. So clearly, this war is not panning out the way that President Trump had thought that it is going to be. But viewers, what we have learned in this war is that battles aren't just fought on the ground. They are fought online as well. And Iran has learned its lesson and is using it quite effectively. Let's tell you about the bunch of memes, because they've been trolling President Trump with their memes coming in from different accounts from Iranian embassies across the world. For example, sample this one. This one says, we aren't opening, another explicit bro. So essentially, Iran telling Trump, we aren't reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Then there are several others. Let's show you the second meme. The second meme is this one, saying Trump says open the Strait of Hormuz. India says, is it closed? Pakistan says closed. Russia says strange. South Africa says open. Of course, France says doesn't look like it. China says open. We just pass through it. And Trump has a crying face on it. So there you have it. How Strait of Hormuz is actually different for different countries. Let's also tell you how you have this one coming in. The regime change has happened successfully with all the army officers who have been struck out by President Trump, saying the regime change has happened in the American military instead. Then you have another meme which is coming in, the next one that we are showing for you. There you have it. Missed out in the Nobel Peace Prize. President Trump now chasing a Nobel Prize for savagery with with pictures of children showing that he's drawn blood. These are the kind of posts which have been coming in. Let's show you the next one. This one has the Strait of Hormuz. However, you have a stranglehold with Trump there, saying that it's choking him, that the strait itself is choking him, and Trump is saying, in this meme, I can't breathe. This is Iranian embassy in Bulgaria, which has put it out. So these are the kind of offensives that we have seen coming in from Iran online. Now let's tell you how, apart from these memes that I've been showing you, let's understand how much leverage Iran does have in this war. How is it that it's actually continuing to fight it? Let's tell you what Iran has, which America fears. First, the toll booth on the Strait of Hormuz. Literally, by using this as one of the financial leverages, Iran has managed to choke global energy supplies. In fact, the exceptions which have been made, remember, as one of the memes also pointed out, exceptions have been made, but only for their friends and not for their enemies or the allies of their enemies. Ground invasion can be thwarted because of the geographical advantages that Iran has, especially when it comes to this area. Also, targeted strikes on American allies has been something which Iran has been carrying out. That it's not just America, even their alliance partners, be it their own neighbors, the Gulf nations, they've been carrying out these targeted strikes, choking the allies of America, also taking targeted strikes at American companies and American military base, which are on their alliances' borders. So those are the leverages that Iran is using quite effectively at that. However, on the other hand, Trump does have some leverage. Let's tell you how Washington could just hold a trump card. Or is every move fraught with risk? Let's tell you what are the options and why it's a bit of a problem for President Trump. Option one is boots on the ground escalation. However, the problem with that is that Trump fears that this may cause casualties and, of course, lead to a bigger backlash back home in America as well, where his popularity is already coming down. The second option that President Trump has tonight is say that he is going to threaten Iran with greater threats, perhaps even a nuclear threat. However, that is very unlikely, because at the end of it, he realizes any kind of a nuclear threat or any kind of strikes with nuclear warheads is going to be a point of no return. In fact, let's tell you how Iran strikes, US F-16 strike is something which everyone is talking about. In fact, let's tell you what exactly it is which went from euphoria to this epic meltdown. Yes, we are talking about that sensational, a very dramatic rescue operation that we saw by America, despite which Trump seems to be very angry, furious. Why? We don't know. But let's explain to you. It's important for you to understand what really had happened. Well, this is how it all began. Iran struck down a US F-15E jet and struck it down in such a manner that there were two of the crew members who were inside it, two Air Force officers who ejected safely from the cockpit. Now, one of the jet's drivers, however, pilots, however, managed to get rescued immediately. There was no problem with that. However, another one of the crew members went missing. The missing crew member then hid in a mountain crevice. In fact, the airman's location was unknown to US as well as to Iran, because he was very careful and he was trained to be very careful about evading any kind of deception. In fact, there were deception techniques which were put in place as well. The airman evaded Iran for over 28 hours, after which the rescue operations had begun. So overall, he was behind enemy lines for 36 hours. Now, this officer is what we are picking up from sources, hooked up a 7,000-foot ridge line as well. He managed to trek up. The airman limited the use of beacons so that he doesn't get detected. The more he would use a beacon to try and connect with the American side, he may have been detected. He avoided that. The CIA then found the airman hiding. They managed to zero in on his location. They informed the Pentagon. The Pentagon then mounted rescue operations along with the CIA. CIA, in fact, initiated a deception operation as well. This was in order to try and confuse Iran. The operation was such that it had convinced Iran that the airman actually has been rescued, and there was bombardment happening at a different place, which was all the way across, close to Isfahan, which of course, interestingly, is also where one of the nuclear sites of Iran. But what happened after that is that Navy SEAL team then managed to extract the officer. The operation, remember, involved about hundreds of special ops troops. US aircraft had kept the Iranians' convoy at bay. In fact, what we are picking up is that there was heavy firing as well, which had happened. The commandos fired at Iran's forces during the extraction. The airman then was flown to Kuwait in the rescue planes. So let's tell you how the United States now says that this is a successful combat search and rescue operation, a mission like no other in the history of United States, but somehow the details are fully not adding up. Let's break down the theories that are doing the round. The first theory is that the scale of operation suggests that there was a bigger mission which was there behind it all. Or perhaps the operation may have targeted strategic materials. What are these strategic materials? Well, yes, of course, we are talking about uranium. Isfahan is the place where this entire conspiracy has been located. It is, after all, many are saying it was a deliberate location chosen by American, that it was not incidental at all, that they decided to land at Isfahan, and that is where this entire rescue op was located. There's a theory which says that the operation may have been disrupted mid-execution, which is why there were American jets being shot down. May have been uranium extraction attempt by America. Well, these, of course, are just theories which have been doing the rounds on social media. But Iran, meanwhile, has put its foot down. The ultimatum is coming to an end. But Iran says we have conditions for these talks. But will these conditions really be acceptable to America and Israel? That's the question. The first condition put out by Iran is no temporary ceasefire. What they want is a permanent end to war between Israel and Iran. They've also said that they want a guarantee that US and Israel are not going to attack Iran again in future. Also, it says that Hormuz, the strait, must reopen after a lasting peace is negotiated. Only after that will it be open, and the control will continue to stay with Iran. Also, Iran has set the condition that talks about Hormuz and only with Oman. That is going to be the only intermediary they are willing to talk via. But are these going to be acceptable to US? We'll have to wait and see. Of course, 10:30 p.m. is when we expect the President Trump to address his nation. We'll have to wait and see what kind of a position that he takes. This seems to be a maximalist position from Iran. Let's go across to our panelists. Joining us today on the show, we have two of our guests from America. We have Sierra Claire, a pro-Trump analyst. She's joining us from California. Peter Kuznick is also joining us from Washington, D.C. The professor is someone who specializes in international relations and diplomacy. Let me go across first to Sierra Trump. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us here on the show. Well, just to quickly sum it up, U.S. is now simultaneously claiming that Trump has won the war. Trump also claims he's currently winning the war. Trump says he needs help to win the war. Then he's also claimed that he needs no help to win the war, that all of it is to destroy a nuclear program which Trump claims he's already destroyed last year. So what state of war is US in with Iran? What do we expect from President Trump?
Well, we are in a conflict that has not reached the threshold to be considered a war where we need the war powers of Congress. This is an imminent threat that the executive branch is handling under its constitutional powers. And the nuclear program, as you said, was destroyed in Operation Midnight Hammer, largely destroyed. There were remnants of it left. Iran was rebuilding it with the help of, some of their partners. We know that. And we also know that they were building a shield, a ballistic missile shield that we saw actually the missile. The whole world saw the missile that almost reached Diego Garcia. So they were getting, further and further along in that program, which would have made it then much harder for anybody to stop them from building a nuclear program. So that's kind of what that is about. And in terms of where we're at now, President Trump wants Iran to save their country and negotiate and agree to a reasonable deal, open up the Strait of Hormuz as he's asked. We'll see if Iran does that. If not, the U.S. military
if Iran says no, because it appears that they have repeatedly at that, what then?
Well, the U.S. military has plans in place. They're going to go forward with the escalations that President Trump has talked about. I think the Iranians should take President Trump's latest statements very seriously. And, the U.S. military has shown their ability to operate at will in Iran. So, I think that Iran could see some really devastating strikes if they cannot come to a deal.
Peter Kuznick, where do we stand? What do you expect tonight? Will it be a ceasefire? Because it does seem that Iran's in no mood to blink. Will President Trump?
Let me first congratulate you on your introduction, which I thought was excellent. And let me say I feel sorry for Sierra trying to defend this absurd war. And what we see now, in terms of ceasefire, it's very, very unlikely. The negotiators for the United States are Kushner and Witkoff, two real estate billionaires who have no understanding of diplomacy, no understanding. The Omani foreign minister said that Iran was making significant concessions and that Kushner and Witkoff didn't even understand what Iran was offering. When Obama negotiated the JCPOA in 2015, there were scores of nuclear experts part of the negotiating team.
Right.
This time they had zero experts of any sort. So you've got these two, Laurel and Hardy, Kushner and Witkoff. They're not competent. But the United States has boxed itself into a very difficult position now, where Trump has got two alternatives, or three maybe. One is to keep the status quo. One is to escalate, which would be a disaster for the United States and the region. And the third is to withdraw and claim victory, which he'll be laughed at.
He's claimed victory already. Peter Kuznick, nothing new in that. He's already claimed victory. Then why not stop?
In fact, the Iranians said he claimed victory 23,456,736 times. They're mocking him. Everybody's mocking him, except that the consequences are tragic in human terms. Mm-hmm. Iran is being bombed mercilessly by the United States and Israel. We can blow things up. There's nobody questions that. The U.S. military is very capable. We can destroy the infrastructure. But we're seeing with the underground missile sites, New York Times says Iran is rebuilding them almost as quickly as the U.S. is destroying them. So Iran its military capability has not been degraded. It's been weakened to some extent, but has prepared for this war for more than 20 years. So they were ready for this. Trump prepared for this war on the toilet for 20 seconds. There was no strategy. There were no goals. There were no objectives. There was no real game plan.
Interestingly, they say that the strategy is something they've already used, the goals they've already achieved, and the war which they've already won. Then why is the fighting? Why is the war still continuing? Tonight, 10:30 p.m. right here on Times Now, you can watch what President Trump has to say. His deadline, of course, ends early tomorrow morning for India, which is 5:30 a.m. Sarah Claire, as well as Peter Kuznick, thank you so much. I appreciate it much for you joining us here. We'll have to just wait and watch, keep our fingers crossed that there will be some semblance of stability at least. With that, I wrap up the show.